Hi, smart moms and dads. Welcome to this episode of the Brainy Moms Podcast, brought to you today by Learning RX Brain Training Centers. I'm Dr. Amy Moore here with Sandy Zamalis. Sandy and I are going to have a conversation with Matt Bowman. Let me tell you a little bit about him. So Matt is an international best-selling author and the founder of Open Ed. For over 30 years, Matt has been reimagining education for the digital age. He's a former sixth grade teacher turned tech executive and education entrepreneur. Matt saw firsthand how the traditional education system often fails to meet the unique needs of individual learners. So together with his wife, Amy, Matt founded Open Ed, which has served more than 100,000 students across multiple states, including military families worldwide. Their approach focuses on blending personalized learning with technology and entrepreneurship skills, giving students the flexibility to learn in ways that work best for them. So Matt holds multiple degrees in education, including the Executive Business Management program at Stanford. He lives in the mountains of Utah, where he and Amy enjoy spending time with their 5 married children and 4 grandchildren and counting. Matt is here today to talk to us about open education. Welcome, Matt.
How are you today? Great to see both of you.
Good to see you too. We're excited to talk to you today.
It's an honor to be with you too, so thank you.
I just love your mission. I love what you're doing. We're in the homeschool space. And so, I mean, from a personal perspective of curating especially as my youngest, curating his educational journey, I wish I had known that your resources existed at the time because I was just winging it. And that's okay. It worked out because, like, after reading your book, I feel like I hit on all of those, right? Like, I'm going to look at his passions and his interests and his strengths, and we're just going to go with it. And it's okay. And I didn't care what other people said. And, you know, my mom has a doctorate in education, and she thought I was crazy for unschooling my youngest kid. What are you doing? What do you mean? What are you doing? What about socialization? Are you right? And I'm like, you need to just leave it because this is what my kid needs. So anyway, so I was super excited just that your philosophy aligns with what we do and how we support a homeschool family.
I was reading through your stuff. I mean, we're very much aligned, like just get out of the way and help the kids thrive, right? So
yeah,
Exactly.
and what are your ages, your kids, Sandra?
Oh, my kids are older, so
old. Our kids
but
are
we
out of school.
we still serve families. So I work with a lot of families that have
Okay.
kids all ages. Yeah, mine are. I'm an empty nester now.
And you're in Utah.
I'm based in Utah. Yep.
Okay. My husband just got back from a 10-day fishing trip in Utah last week.
What part? Do you know?
The Green River,
Yeah.
the northeast corner.
Yeah.
Yeah. Usually go to Montana. He has a group of friends that usually go to Montana for 10 days. But the river's, the water level was too low for fishing. And so the week before, they sort of had to drop back and punt and go, okay, where are we going instead? And so they went to Utah, and now they're saying maybe that's where they want to go next year because it was phenomenal. The fish were huge. I mean,
That's
you couldn't
awesome.
believe how fat these trout were. So, do you
love it.
fish?
That's great. I do not fish.
Yeah.
Me neither.
Yeah, I don't either. But he's an avid fly fisherman.
I'm just not. I don't have the patience for how often I get tangled up in the weeds and have to start over again.
Yeah. Well, I think that's part of their
Joy.
Yeah. They're like, okay, well, whatever. So anyway. Okay.
We're so glad you're here. I love this topic. I'm very much we need to rethink the education system for our kids person. Huge advocate for homeschooling. I homeschooled my kids as well. So did, I know Amy did as well. And so let's jump in there. How did you get started in this space of just trying to rethink education for families?
Started as being a parent, 5 children, right? You guys would appreciate that. So my wife and I were raising our 5 children in the same household, the same expectations, same job charts and cadences and schedules. and all 5 were different. And we started realizing, if they're so different from each other, personalities, interests, likes, dislikes, their education should probably be tailored a little differently for them as well. You can't just in a box serve all kids. And so we started thinking, what can we do for each child? Every year we'd say, what should their education program look like this year? And we realized soon that other families were dealing with the same question and the same challenge of how do you adapt education to each child? And the system's not set up to do that. And so we realized, well, let's try to figure out how do we help families. And we tap, the message of open education is not just one version of another schooling is better. Like, don't get pigeonholed into the label of even public or charter or district or micro or homeschool or unschool. Tap into all of them. Figure out what your child needs and say, what are the resources that we need to tap into? So we started doing that at scale and realized just tens of thousands of families needed that same support structure. Is just how do I navigate a traditionally standardized system with a very unique child? So that's where it all started.
I love that.
Yeah, I do too. I always wondered, as adults, we do a whole bunch of different things with our lives, right? Our careers are really individualized and so diverse. So why do we educate children for 12 years in the exact same way?
I agree.
Right. And you talk about that in your book, right? You talk about that, Horace Mann adopting this, European idea of training up obedient soldiers, right? And he brought it back to America and said, this is how we should educate kids. And I thought, do people not know that?
It's been around for 200 years. But I would say just within the last few years, people are starting to really realize that, maybe that's not the right model. And in fact, AI is adding to that, right? So recently in the last year, AI has disrupted so many future traditional plans. You can't just be guaranteed a diploma to a college, to a work, to a job for life. AI has said, don't plan on that at all. So it's making parents ask themselves, well, what is education? What should I be thinking about as they're adults? And then you start saying, well, what should I be thinking about when they're K-12 also, right? And so it really is just over the last few years, the momentum is just building so much around parents saying there's got to be a different way.
Yeah.
I'm sure so many parents seek you out because they're looking for something like this. They're looking for a way to think outside the box. Let's start there. How do you help parents sort of deschool? Because that's part of the problem, right? We have a view or perception of what school should look like. And so we almost have to deschool ourselves as parents in order to rethink what it looks like for our student. How do you help with that?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Sandra. That is the starting point, is that we're so ingrained in one version of what schooling looks like that it's really hard to think outside of that. But it's so funny. Once you see it, you can't unsee it, right? You start to say, oh, wow, you know what? Maybe I can just do a little more flexibility in a structure to start, and then just start adding flexibilities to that. So, to your point, the first thing is just to acknowledge or ask yourself, is my child happy? Like, I like to just start with that question. If you and your children are happily enjoying their current education program, great, keep doing it. I'm not here to say whatever you're doing is wrong, change it. No, that it's opposite. If your child is thriving, doing well, enjoys everything about it, and you're comfortable with it, you're good with the schedule and the routines, and then keep doing it. But if there's some unhappiness or some stress or some anxiety or some little thing that's niggling at you that says, you know what, something's off a little bit, just stop and say, okay, what could I do differently? And number one recommendation is don't start everything at once, right? So just start small. I like to tell parents, maybe take 2 weeks off. Just write a letter. Your school may not like it or whatever, but write a little letter that says, my child's going to be gone for 2 weeks. He's safe. He's well. He just, he can't come for 2 weeks. And just kind of see what happens. And if you have multiple children, maybe do it one at a time, right? So you have, one child at home for a couple weeks and just spend some time with them and see what they discover, see what they're like, and then if they're longing to go back to the structure that they had, yeah, send them back. You've only taken 2 weeks out. That's great, right? So literally just start small and then start saying, okay, what could I plug in? Or, then eventually maybe it's, oh, I'm just going to take them home at noon every day. They're going to go to school in the mornings, and then at noon, I'm going to pick them up and we're going to go explore the world or start a business or entrepreneurship I love for kids, that kind of thing. So just find ways that you can trial it and see if there's some steps you start uncovering that are really powerful between you and your child.
Yeah, and I think that one-on-one time and that time of low pressure, low stress really then gives your child an opportunity to explore what it is that they even want to talk to you about, right? That they have this space to dream and to think and, to share. And I think that's beautiful.
Yeah. And we haven't, I put in the book tactical activities you could do, whatever time you want to start. And we start with just what are your children's interests? And as you know, so many parents said, I don't know. I have no idea what my child really likes. And it's often because they're overstructured. Their schedule's too busy. They haven't ever had a chance to show you what they would do if they don't have anything to do, right? So you want some downtime. You want some unstructured time. And then start with just watching what they think about when they don't have to think about anything. And, we start with interests, but then we couch that under needs. So we also, it's not just a blank slate. Do whatever you're interested in. We have to sync that with child needs, parent needs, sibling needs, home management needs. Then we turn to the neighborhood, where the neighborhood needs, where the community needs. And as you start kind of mixing the interests with needs, something really beautiful happens. You start to realize that your children have interests that might solve a need in the community. And if you marry those together, natural learning starts to occur and joy returns and the stress goes down. And it's really pretty magical. So it's fun to see that.
Absolutely. And then I would think too, on the opposite end, you've got some kids who are really struggling. And so they're neurodivergent, or they have special needs, or they are, dealing with a learning disability. And it's my contention that struggling learners are under chronic stress. And we know that the brain responds the same way to chronic stress as it does to acute trauma. And so these kids who are struggling are in this fight or flight mode. And so, of course, they can't think about what it is that they're interested in or passionate about because they're just trying to survive.
I think that's really well said. Like that, and I believe you. And that's grounded in science and grounded in research and fact that those kids just can't. They're just just in a mode of fight and survival that they just can't be freed up to think about interests that they might have. Like you can't do it.
Right. And the reality is a parent could say, okay, well, too bad, right? You still have to go to school. These are still the requirements. This is the legal requirement. This is what we do. We go to school. But if we are in fight or flight, then our amygdala has hijacked our prefrontal cortex and we can't think and learn anyway. And so just pushing our child through that isn't going to work. We have to make a change. We have to be able to recognize that, pull back, decompress, give our child some breathing room so that then we can say, okay, how can I best support my child?
Yeah. And I'll add that, like it or not, parents in today's world have to take that step of caring. They just can't no longer just outsource that to the public school or whatever. parents, again, whether you like it or not, the times changed enough now that you need to take that forward step and say, okay, my child's struggling. The schools sometimes aren't equipped to help your child in the way that you know that they need it. So you're going to have to step up a little bit more and do something. And so that's where we kind of just want to bring all the resources to the table to help parents navigate that challenge that maybe they didn't feel like they signed up for, 20 years ago or 10 years ago. So but time is now, and it's exciting to be able to help families see that light bulb go on and what they can do. And there's more flexibility than you think when you look at all these regulations and expectations.
I think a lot of parents maybe feel unqualified, and that's kind of the hiccup that they have when the child is struggling. They're not sure what to do, and so there's definitely a thread in our society that says, there are, the school is qualified, and what I'm hearing you say is not always. I mean, yes, in some respects, but they might not have the resources, and
Right.
they aren't going to
Qualified,
move at
but
the
not necessarily
speed.
equipped.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. They're not going to move at the speed you need them to move. It's going to take them years to address the issue. So talk about that a little bit. What is, the program that you guys do? What do you do to help equip parents so that they do feel like they have, if not the qualifications, the resources available to them?
Yeah, so we have a couple different program models. So one is where we partner with school districts to tap into their resources and bring those resources to the family at home. So that's what we've been doing for 17 years now. That was the genesis of it. Is I wanted it to be accessible to all. There wasn't a private tuition threshold that only the rich could access it. So we've really been working for, again, this is our 17th year that we've been delivering a program in partnership with school districts around the country. And if we're in your state, we can bring to you resources at no cost to you. So that's where we start. We say, okay, where's your child? What does he or she need? And then let's tap into curriculum, teachers, technology, tutors, sport, student clubs, virtual, teams, those kinds of things, just to bring together a community of families and educators and parents to be able to help children wherever they are. And, here's a funny example that sometimes what I've learned over the years is that when a kid says, I'm not good at math, which is a common, you hear that, that's a common sentence. And what's funny is I say, oh, you know what? That's the adult's fault. It's not that you're not good at math. We haven't found the math curriculum that clicks with the way your brain learns math. And they're like, oh, you mean it's not me? It's the curriculum choice, right? Because there's dozens, if not hundreds of different ways to teach math. And when you can finally find that clicking light bulb for a kid when they learn math the way that their brain is wired, it's exciting, it's thrilling, and it's great. They're no longer bad at math because we've been able to find the resource that taps into it. And that's what really is our program that's so different, is that we didn't say, here's the curriculum that y'all have to do. We say, let's start with a child and find the curriculum that helps them. And that kind of backwards approach has really been well received by families, to create this kind of marketplace of vetted curriculum. Try another, figure out if that works for you. And if it doesn't, drop it. Don't force it. If it's not working well, don't use it, right? And there's other options. And pair that along with a really caring, experienced teacher that's there to help you as the parent and the child navigate what they need to learn and what they want to learn. And then, add to that technology, resources, software, Adobe licenses, Minecraft licenses, Lego licenses, whatever, right? So we just flood the child with whatever resources they need to be able to pursue the passion and purpose they have in their life.
I love that. So that starts with a questionnaire or a conversation, or how do you help parents determine the right path for their child?
Yeah, we've built a really customized platform. So it starts on our technology platform, where parents are given kind of this free range to start building. What are some activities? What are some things I want to do this year? So they start just kind of putting that on their education plan. And then we have some prompts that fill that in with, oh, this curriculum might help with that, or this set of options might support that plan that you have. So it starts with, what are some ideas and interests that my family has to learn this year? And then we populate that with some ideas of curriculum options that they could use. And then it's tap into our parent support staff and our teachers and really take the next level down and say, okay, now that you've chosen this category or this area that you want to study, what do you think about this curriculum? And you've chosen that one. And what can we do as a teacher or a resource to help with that plan? So that's really just kind of starts there and builds the education plan. You know, we say we want to help parents become education designers. And that's what our platform starts with, is that premise that let's help parents navigate the world of, unlimited options is overwhelming, right? And so we try to just say, what's your plan? And just introduce 2 or 3 different options at a time. Let them demo it, trial, have a trial version of something, or we'll ship them books or whatever they need. And the other thing that we do in our program really well is we embrace the community aspect of education. And so there's so many, as you both know, raising your children, there's so much education available in the community that sometimes we set aside as, oh, that's just after school, or that's just enrichment, or that's just seasonal, or whatever. But you know what? Bring that into the daytime and say, what if that was part of our plan? Mathnesium or Sylvan Learning Centers, or, ballet classes, or piano lessons, or karate studios, or sports leagues, or let's not just have that be an and after, let's have that be part of education. And there's so much learning that can happen when you bundle in the community education aspect of museums and zoos and planetariums. And, all those things are so amazing to help round out that experience. And then again, I mentioned entrepreneurship. I love kids of all ages. I've helped kids as young as 6 go start a business. So go out in the community and say, in my neighborhood, what problem can I solve that someone will pay me something for? And if you don't want to go profit focus, then go be service oriented, that you're trying to, I'm going to raise money for this cause. And so I'm going to do these service or bring you these products or cookies or whatever. Right. So you can do both entrepreneurship, for profit and nonprofit. It's really just the idea of adding value to a problem in your community and seeing if you can help be a leader in solving that.
So I want to talk a little bit about how, even though you're helping parents curate an education program or collection of opportunities that meet their child's individual needs, you aren't trying to approximate a public school or private school classroom, because you're trying to break parents out of that idea that your child needs to learn this, then you assess them, they get a grade, and then you move on to the next thing. You're trying to totally change the mindset of what mastery looks like, right? And I know that in your book, you give examples of athletes and, their completion percentages, and how if they were graded on their completion percentages, then people like LeBron James and Michael Jordan would not be considered elite athletes, right? And you talked about...
I've got to insert there, Dr. Amy, that, I had to do it. One of my chapters starts with LeBron James is a failure, ... He's not one of the greatest athletes and basketball players of all time, but the ... is, if we graded him like we grade kids in school.
Yes.
And he would, his stats would be a failure.
Right.
So,
56% or something like that. Right. Yeah. Well, and so I love then how you bring professional musicians in, and, you talk about how you attempt something, you fail at it, then you make this adjustment, then you try again, right? That mastery isn't a one and done grading process. And so it made me think, my youngest son and his fiance are music performance majors at CSU, and she's a cellist. He's a flautist, flute player. Okay. So they are actually performing a piece together this semester, and I watched them workshop it over the weekend. And there were measures of music of them playing together that were straight out of heaven. Beautiful synergy in how they play. And then there were these measures of failure. And I say music, I mean, by music measures on the
Yeah.
staff, right? Where they
Yeah.
just were out of sync, complete failures, hitting the wrong notes, and they would stop each other, correct each other, yell at each other, and then they would play beautifully again. And so I watched this process of this was great. Oh, you failed. This was great. Oh, you failed. And that was okay because that is the process of learning and beginning to perfect it and beginning to master it, but knowing that you're going to fall over flat on your face and fail multiple times before you get it right. And that's okay.
I love that. I love that example. In the book and in my life, I love the phrase "not yet," and that's really what we focus on. Is that we're all a bunch of not yets, and we have a bunch of not yets in our life. We have some things mastered, maybe close to master, at least proficient in what we do, but we have a lot of not yets as adults, and yet we tell kids they can't have not yets. That's just ridiculous on face value, and then we threaten kids that like failure is so bad. If you don't do what I say, I'm going to fail you.
Mhm.
What does that teach the kid about failure? It's something to avoid at all costs, and it's a punishment. Whereas you meet artists and musicians and athletes, and failure is like the rewarding part because you tried something that you failed at and you're going to try to do better at it. Right. So that's like the beautiful thing of failure. And we raise kids thinking that failure is a threatening thing that we have to avoid at all costs, and you're a bad kid if you fail. And that's just the opposite of what these kids need.
Yeah.
Yeah. You talk a lot about the average student myth and just, and all that standardization, all the testing that we do to our kids. This kind of falls in line with kind of what you're saying here is, we're priming our kids from a very early age that if they don't do it perfectly, they are failures. And they don't get to practice and enjoy the process.
Or that they're behind, right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
the phrase that just drives me crazy.
Yeah. Talk
Behind
more about
who?
that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, we have a whole chapter on there's no such thing of an average child than the myth of an average child. And I think, Dr. Amy, I read that your husband's a Air Force pilot or retired or something.
Mhm.
And we use that example from the 40s or 50s. So the Air Force sought out to design the perfect cockpit seat for Air Force pilots to make them more safe and more efficient. And it turned out, so they measured like across 100 different characteristics of these pilots and designed the perfect average seat. And it fit nobody. Not one person fit the average seat. And it ended up actually like deaths occurred because they weren't able to eject properly or reach the right controls or whatever. Like lives that were at stake there because they put average seats in the airplanes. So then that led to adjustable seats. Go figure, right? We need, everybody's different. And so let's have a seat that can adjust and forward and backwards. We can't imagine cars or chairs these days that don't adjust, right? And so, because every body style is so different. And so that's the premise of we've ignored that truth in a very standardized public ed system to say every child at third grade in 4 months should be at this level or else they're behind. And it's just ridiculous on all child development research that says that's not true. And then don't even get me started on the difference between boys and girls, right? I mean, every child development expert would say girls are 18 months ahead, if not more, for many of the early years. And yet we put a boy and a girl on the same third grade and 8 months reading scale and say, oh, the boys must just not, they must need medication or no recess to read more. And like the opposite of all that is needed for those kids, right? And so, and I love one of the things we focus on with boys in particular, there's research out there that, you can validate or challenge that says boys need to be exhausted before their brains are ready to learn. So they just make them run for an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours before you try to squeeze in 10 minutes of math, right? Let their bodies be exhausted, and more learning will occur in that 10 minutes than if you focus an hour and a half on the math. I just love that. We're all different. Every child's different. Embrace that unique children need unique options.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So I want to read you a quote from your book and have you speak to it because I highlighted it because it was so impactful. And so this is talking about how we assess learning and measure learning in the school system and what we get wrong. Okay, here we go from your book. You say the real tragedy is that this system not only fails to measure what matters in education, creativity, continuous progress, critical thinking, skill development, and more, it actively works against it. While politicians and policymakers debate solutions based on test scores, the fundamental needs of children to move, play, socially interact, and experience genuine discovery continue to be sacrificed. This disconnect demonstrates the system's own failure to understand how children actually develop and learn. So these experts who have created the system of measuring progress and growth don't even understand fundamentally how children learn and develop, is what you're saying.
I agree. And it just sounds so shocking to hear that, doesn't it? That we have thought that the experts that design the system are grounded in child development knowledge. And that's just not true. They're grounded in assessment theory or standardization or policy or things that can be measured and controlled in a box. That's how our systems are designed. They're not designed by people that are looking at the child themselves. And so, it's really, you reminded me by reading that just how far off we are when we ignore the human nature of each child instead of just trying to create a system for everything. And again, who to blame on all that? There's layers up and down. And so I was purposeful not to blame too many people, right? Like this is one book that doesn't lash out at some group for some reason, right? The purpose isn't to blame people. It's to shine a light that this isn't the best way to do it. And let's figure out some options. And, I read an article yesterday about the national crisis of chronic absenteeism. I'm sure you've seen those headlines, right? Kids are not going to school at the rate they used to. And there's all these now bureaucrats and people trying to solve that problem by looking at the data. And there was one comment somewhere that part of the article said, many researchers are saying they're discovering that the answer when they ask parents and kids the question, why don't they go to school? Their answer is school is boring. And I'm like, yeah, we should probably start there. We should probably create an environment where kids want to go there because it's exciting. There's learning. And I tell you, as a teacher, former teacher myself, I would want that environment to be part of. Teachers didn't sign up to be test preppers and just deliver test prep all the time and standardize everything. Teachers want to inspire and celebrate learning journey that kids go through in their lives. And we just don't let them do that. And so it's just it's something that we really want to just to help people realize that there are better ways to do this. And it's opening up education to all forms, embrace it. Don't just get pigeonholed into one path.
I know probably the bigger existential problem is that, a lot of the policymakers, politicians, big people in education, they're coming at it from what does our nation need? What do we need as a society? And so then they ratchet it back, to skills, right? And then kind of try to put together an education that matches what they think the nation needs, right? Which is how we got into things like STEM, right? STEM was the big thing for, like a decade. But, what I'm hearing you say is we really need the opposite approach. We really need to look at our individual children. It's almost like the ultimate and true individualized education, where we really look at each individualized student and figure out what are their gifts. What are their talents? Where do they need some extra skill support or help? That's where, Amy and I live. We
Yeah, love
want
it.
to help unlock those talents and gifts by helping them strengthen, skills that might be holding them back. So that's what I'm hearing you say. That's like these two worlds where, you know, we've got the big thinkers who are trying to average out everything based on
Right.
whatever perceived needs we have as a society. And then we as parents need to kind of totally take that apart and look at each individual student in our home and figure out how to help them build those talents.
It's so true, Sandra. That's exactly right. And, state officials over the years have said, Matt, that all sounds great for a few kids. You can't do that at scale. You can't personalize at scale. I have to deal with a million kids in the state. How can I personalize education for every child? And I think I've been able to challenge that.
You're like, Taylor, hold my beer.
Sweet. It's like, you know what? It can be done at scale.
Yeah.
There are things like technology. There are things like platforms. There are things like humans that can connect, and over virtual beings and dial down to right to the very home, the very child, what they need. And it's doable at scale. Like literally, it's not something that's just dreamy. It's just you have to want to. And that's the biggest thing. I'm going to steal a line from Mike Rowe, a great advocate for skills-based, vocational, our country. That's what our country right now needs a lot of, especially with AI. And he says, we don't have a skill gap. We have a will gap. I think that same will gap exists in our either legislature or state offices or policymakers or whatever, or even local state boards or school boards or whatever might have a will gap. Just they aren't willing to just say, let's do something different. Now we're finding the ones who do. We're finding superintendents and school boards across the country that say, you know what? Enough of this declining enrollment. Nobody wants to come here. What can we do to have them want to come back? And we're like, this is what they want. And so they're like, all right, let's give them that. And we have them coming back in droves, just family after family that comes and says, that will help my child. That's what we're talking about. And it's just super exciting to be able to see there are people that want to do the right thing for kids. And again, there's more flexibility in all state structure and regulations than most people think. You just have to be willing to push it a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, that this whole attendance issue, I would argue that it isn't just kids saying, I'm bored. It's kids saying, I can't. And so when you are frustrated because you can't meet an expectation that's unrealistic because it is beyond your skill set or because it isn't realistic for your age or developmental level, right? Then that frustration turns into low self-esteem. It turns into obstinate behavior. It's a domino effect. And so if we don't go back to looking at the root issue, of why is my child exhibiting school refusal, right? And it very well may be boredom, right? Because we have
Right.
kids on that end of the spectrum. They're like, I'm not being challenged. But
No,
you've
I
got
agree.
kids
That's just one of many.
Yeah. Absolutely. So speaking of, we need to take a break and let Sandy read a word from our sponsor.
Are you concerned about your child's reading or spelling performance? Are you worried your child's reading curriculum isn't thorough enough? At LearningRx, we recognize that most learning struggles aren't the result of poor curriculum or instruction. Instead, learning struggles are typically caused by having cognitive skills that need to be strengthened. Skills like auditory processing, visual processing, memory, and processing speed. LearningRx one-on-one brain training programs are designed to target and strengthen the skills that we rely on for reading, spelling, writing, and learning. With experience training more than 130,000 children and adults already, we'd like to help you get your child on the path to a brighter and more confident future too. Give LearningRx a call at 866-BRAIN01 or visit learningrx.com. That's learningrx.com.
So, Matt, I want to talk about something that we talked about at the top of the hour before we started recording. And that is, you say you need to put your kids before your reputation. And I think that holds a lot of parents back, parents who are considering homeschooling or unschooling or alternative schooling for their kids, but they're afraid of what their family will think, their friends will think. Are they, doing something that's against societal standards? Talk about that and how we can start to dispel um, that idea or kind of allay that anxiety.
That's so interesting that we had to dedicate a whole chapter to that topic, right? Because we realized that probably is one of the biggest stumbling blocks for any parent getting started into a mindset that's focused on their child's education. It's their reputation is preventing them from that. They want to be able to, the kudos they get or the applaud or praise they get at the grocery store or at the family reunion or Christmas dinner with grandma and grandpa that says, oh, my child's, 4.0 student and they're going to college and they're going to be a doctor, gets all this padded praise. And so we sometimes misinterpret that as, oh, I'm doing the right thing. That might not be the right thing. And so we highlight that you have to put your child's needs ahead of your reputation. Take a step back. It can be humbling. It can make you swallow some pride. It can be, oh, I wish I could have said that, that my child is doing some great thing at, research study at Stanford or whatever, right? So we just have to get past that and say, what does that child need? Now, their sibling might need that, right? What we can celebrate. One of the examples that just made it so real in the book was Isaac, our co-author. He was chatting with a mom who had I think a 22, 23-year-old daughter who was a college graduate and had done everything that system told her to do. Straight A student, went to college, got a degree, and then she had an 18-year-old son. So that's the story. And she was saying, oh, I wish my son were more like my daughter, right? That's very, because what turns out, the son had dropped out of college after one semester. He was making $5,000 a month in his business that he began. So he was, in his mind, thriving. I'm making $5,000 a month. I started this, my entrepreneurship gig. I'm never going to college. That's a waste of time. And he was off and running in his business pursuit. She couldn't handle that. She would tell her family he's a dropout. And yet her daughter was living back in her basement with like $100,000 in debt, no job prospects, depressed, anxious, and not knowing where to go. And the mom was saying, I wish my son were more like my daughter. And that's the epitome of our society, puts these expectations on parents that if they don't have a direct to a college or a master's or an advanced degree and they're, have all this debt, for some reason we forget that's okay. Whereas kids who start businesses or start on apprenticeships or internships or whatever and have no debt, like one of our phrases we sometimes celebrate in our family is 23 and debt free, because our kids have chosen a path that doesn't burden them with debt, and success looks differently for each child, whether it's industry certifications or a skill or apprenticeship or a college degree. Like, I don't care if that meets what you need, do it. But if it doesn't, don't, right? It's that simple. So reputation is a hard one to get over. And you just got to do it. You just got to set that aside and say what's best for my child and take the slings and arrows that come from others.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that, for us, I will never forget when we even started considering alternative options. We were sitting in the principal's office the very last day of school. And our child had been on an IEP and 504 plan, and we were supposed to be alerted to any missing assignments as soon as they were missing, things like that. And we got a notification the night before the last day of school that our child with ADHD had 21 missing assignments and was going to fail that class if those assignments were not turned in by the next morning. Well, that's not realistic, right? I don't care. I don't care if you have a Ferrari brain, you're not going to do 21 assignments the night before the last day of school. And so my husband and I marched in there the last day of school, demanded to see the principal, said, he is an IEP. This is a requirement. You are required to inform us, right? And that was the conversation for the hour. And at the end of the conversation, the guidance counselor looked at us and said, well, I think he fell through the cracks. And I said, we're going to disenroll him. And my husband and I got in the car, looked at each other with deer caught in headlights because we were like, we just disenrolled our middle schooler. What do we do now? Right? And so as we looked at all of our alternatives, it began this process of saying, we need to meet the needs of our child, and we're going to care more about his emotional health and his academics. Like that was priority number one. And that followed us through all three kids. We're going to care more about their emotional health than academics, because that's going to fall into place. Like if we meet those social emotional needs, then the rest is going to fall into place. So I think parents need to know what they value. I think they need to identify what they value. And then that value needs to be at the forefront of the decision making for their child, because the rest will fall into place, right?
I totally agree. Yeah. The right time, the right things will click. They'll get it. They'll have access to what they need, and they'll want to learn skills to pursue what they're interested in. That's a human trait. If we give the right destructured environment for them to flourish like that. So,
right. And this child is an entrepreneur now. Right. And
I feel like it's an American legacy. Like, I really feel like just as Americans, we have this legacy of entrepreneurship and innovation. Like, if you look at any of the big, Elon Musk or Bill Gates, all of those guys, none of them followed the path. They went about it in a whole different way. And like, maybe it's just something we as parents need to like also remember and embrace. No, we're innovators. We can think outside the box.
I agree. Like our country is founded on those principles of entrepreneurship and innovation. And, it's one of those things that with the unknown future that AI is creating,
right.
I really say entrepreneurship skills are the thing that will help everyone navigate the future. Just start thinking.
AI is going to help bridge some of these gaps, right? Like AI is going to be able to design a curriculum that, speaks to your child who loves baseball.
Yeah.
And can like loop everything around baseball.
I totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I was at the library yesterday with my 5-year-old granddaughter. You mentioned in my bio, we have, and counting, 2 of our children are having more children. So they're both, we're expecting 2 more grandkids in February. So we're excited to add to that total. But I was at the library yesterday with her, just, grandpa day in the library with her. And there was these bundles of books. I thought it was awesome. On the shelf, they had bundled all these books on dinosaurs or cats or the space, and I thought that's really cool. Like just the simple act of the librarian pulling together 6 or 7 books into a little bundle, and it was all just in a little strap. You could just pick it up and check out that bundle on space. I was like, that's cool. Like we have resources, and then add that to the AI thing of just creating bundles of information and opportunities and resources on whatever topics our children are interested in. That can help them see the value of learning, get excited about learning, and remove kind of that structure and pressure away from it. And you'd be surprised how much they'll enjoy that.
Yeah. And, I've always said, because I was an early childhood educator, I've always said I can teach every single subject through one topic.
Yeah.
Right. So if you are passionate about cats, I can teach every single subject through cats, science and math and reading and
Yes.
And so it can be that simple to start, right? So
and that's this idea of identifying your interests, what are your family needs and what are the resources around that to help achieve a education plan. It's not more complicated than that. What are you interested in? What do you need? And what are the resources?
Yeah.
So-
And some of those resources are internal and
Yep.
others you're going to have to seek out, right? Some are low cost, some are
Yep.
higher cost, but they're all available. And I think that's what's beautiful about what you do is that you curate these resources for your families.
Yeah, we say really take a look at all the resources and then just stack rate them from free to expensive. And just go down that stack until you can't afford it. Right? I mean, it's that there's so many available from free to expensive. But if you are tight on budget, then stop at free. But there are really so many things available that you can really design a great plan, even at a free level.
Yeah. All right. So, Matt, we are out of time, but what have you not getting? Listen to me. Maybe I need to go back to school. What have you not gotten to talk about that you would like to leave our listeners with today?
I think we've covered everything. Just again, the idea I would summarize: every child's unique. Put your children ahead of your reputation. Design a learning landscape. Realize that there's opportunities there. Give your child a voice. Maybe we didn't touch that much on, which is let them be part of that discussion. Don't have it be a top-down only. Even as research says, as young as 8 or 9 years old, they have the ability to have opinions and feedback and care about what's happening in their life, right? So give them a voice in that. And then the last thing we end with is a learner-driven sprint. Experiment for 2 weeks. You can do it. You can do something for 2 weeks and just see what happens. Have them study cats and then tell them what they, feed them with resources. And after 2 weeks, have them share with the family what they learned. Period. And that's all. Don't structure it more than that and see what happens. So that's where I'd summarize what we've talked about.
I love that. Where can our listeners find you and find more about OpenEd?
opened.co/book is where you can download a free toolkit to help get started and learn more and connect through there. So that'd be great.
All right. Fantastic. Matt Bowman, thanks for being with us today.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Listeners, if you want more from us, you can find us at thebrainymoms.com. We are on social media at The Brainy Moms. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok. Be sure to visit Sandy at The Brain Trainer Lady on TikTok if you want to see more about Learning RX. And look, that is all the smart stuff that we have for you today. So we hope after listening to this episode, you feel a little smarter. We'll catch you next time.